Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he watched the repair crew work on his cargo ship. The old vessel had served him well for 3 years, but the hyperdrive was acting up again. He needed it fixed before he could make his next delivery run to the mining colonies. Nexus Station buzzed with activity around him. Aliens of every shape and size walked past, most giving him dirty looks or stepping aside like he carried some disease. Jake was used to it by now. Humans were still new to this part of the galaxy, and most aliens thought they were nothing more than violent primitives. A tall blue alien with 4 arms bumped into Jake without apologizing. The creature muttered something in its own language that Jake was pretty sure was an insult. He just shrugged and kept walking toward the station's market level. He needed to grab some food supplies while the repairs were being done. The lower levels of Nexus Station were darker and seedier than the main commercial areas. This was where the desperate came to find work, where illegal deals were made and where people disappeared if they weren't careful. Jake had been here before, but he always stayed alert. He was looking at some dried protein bars when he heard shouting from a nearby alley. 3 large aliens in expensive suits had cornered someone against a wall. Jake could see it was a female, alien with pale blue skin and long silver hair that seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. "Your payment is overdue," one of the suit-wearing aliens growled. He looked like a cross between a lizard and a rhinoceros with thick gray skin and small black eyes. The Hegemony Banking Consortium does not accept excuses. The blue-skinned alien pressed herself against the wall. Jake could see bruises on her arms and face. Her clothes were torn and dirty, and she looked like she hadn't eaten in days. "Please," she said in accented but clear galactic standard. "I just need more time. I'm looking for work, but no one will hire a Zephyrian. If you give me another month, I can find something." The lead debt collector laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "Another month? You said that 3 months ago. Your debt has grown to 50,000 credits with interest and penalties. Face facts, alien. No respectable company will hire your kind." Jake knew he should walk away. This wasn't his business, and getting involved with debt collectors was never smart, but something about the desperation in the female alien's voice made him stop. "The mining corporations on Kepler 7 need workers," the second collector said. He was thinner than the first, with green skin and too many teeth. "They'll pay good. Money for a healthy Zephyrian. The work is dangerous, but that's not our problem." "No, please," the blue alien begged. "That's not work, that's slavery. Zephyrians who go to the mining worlds never come back." "You should have thought of that before you took our money," the first collector said. He grabbed her arm roughly. "You have 48 hours to pay in full, or we sell your contract to the miners. That's final." Jake found himself stepping forward before he could think about it. "Hey, leave her alone." All 3 collectors turned to stare at him. The first one's eyes widened when he saw Jake's human features. "Stay out of this, primitive," the thin one hissed. "This is hegemony business. Looks like you're harassing someone who can't fight back," Jake said calmly. He kept his hands at his sides, but his posture was relaxed and ready. "That doesn't seem very civilized to me." The lead collector studied Jake for a moment. Humans had a reputation for being unpredictable and violent. Most aliens preferred to avoid confrontation with them when possible. "This female owes the consortium money," he said finally. "If she cannot pay, she must work off her debt. It is perfectly legal." "How much does she owe?" Jake asked. 50,000 credits, plus processing fees. Why do you care, human?" Jake pulled out his credit pad and checked his balance. He had been saving money for months to upgrade his ship's cargo capacity, but he had enough to cover the debt. "I'll pay it," he said simply. The collectors looked shocked. The blue alien stared at Jake like he had grown a second head. "You would pay 50,000 credits for a stranger?" the lead collector asked suspiciously. "What do you want from her?" "Nothing," Jake said. "Just transfer the debt to me and leave her alone." The collectors exchanged glances. They didn't care where the money came from as long as they got paid. After a few minutes of electronic paperwork, the debt was settled and the collectors left. The blue alien collapsed against the wall, shaking. Jake approached her slowly, not wanting to frighten her more than she already was. Are you okay? He asked gently. She looked up at him with large violet eyes. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. You looked like you needed help, Jake said. What's your name? Lyra, she whispered. I am Lyra of the Zephyr colony, but I don't understand. Why would a human help a Zephyrian? Your species is supposed to be selfish and violent. Jake sat down on a nearby crate so he wouldn't tower over her. Maybe what you've heard about humans isn't completely true. Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Lyra tried to stand but stumbled. Jake caught her arm to steady her. She was lighter than he expected, and he could feel how thin she had become. I haven't eaten in 3 days, she admitted. I spent my last credits trying to pay down the debt, but the interest kept growing faster than I could pay. Come on, Jake said, helping her walk. Let's get you some food and figure out what to do next. As they walked toward the station's food court, Lyra kept glancing at Jake like she expected him to demand something from her. She had never met a human before, but everything she had been taught said they were dangerous and cruel. I have nothing to offer you in return, she said, quietly. My family spent everything they had to pay for my education, hoping I could find good work with one of the major corporations. But no one will hire a Zephyrian for anything but manual labor. Jake bought her a meal and watched her eat hungrily. She was obviously intelligent and well-educated, but the galaxy's prejudices had left her with no opportunities. What did you study? He asked. Xenobiology and cultural analysis, Lyra replied between bites. I speak 7 languages and have degrees from the University of New Andromeda, but none of that matters when employers see my species designation. Jake thought about his own situation. He was a small-time cargo hauler who could use help with the business side of things, and maybe having someone who understood alien cultures could help him get better contracts. I have a proposition for you, he said. I need someone to help me with my cargo business, someone who understands different alien cultures and can help me negotiate better deals. The pay isn't great, but it's steady work, and you'd have your own quarters on my ship. Lyra stared at him in amazement. You would hire me? As an equal employee? Of course, Jake said. What did you think I meant? Lyra's eyes filled with tears. In her desperation, she had been prepared to offer herself as a servant for life just to survive. But this human was offering her something she had almost stopped believing in, a chance at a real future. Yes, she said firmly. I accept your offer, and I promise you won't regret it. 2 days later, Jake's ship was ready to leave Nexus Station. He had named it the Star Runner, though most people said it looked more like a flying junkyard. The cargo hauler wasn't pretty, but it was reliable and had enough space for crew quarters. Lyra stood in the ship's small galley, staring at the bed Jake had set up for her. She couldn't understand why he had given her the second-best room on the ship. In her mind, she was still his servant, even though he kept telling her she was his employee. This is too much, she said when Jake came to check on her. I should sleep in the cargo hold. It's not proper for someone like me to have such nice quarters. Jake shook his head. You're my science officer and cultural advisor now. You need a good place to rest so you can do your job properly. Lyra looked confused. Science officer? But I thought you wanted me to clean and cook and serve you. Why would you think that? Jake asked. I can cook my own food and clean my own ship. What I need is someone who understands alien cultures and can help me make better business deals. The concept was so foreign to Lyra that she struggled to accept it. Every story she had heard about humans painted them as selfish creatures who used others for their own gain. Yet Jake seemed genuinely interested in treating her as an equal. Their first job together was delivering medical supplies to a research station in the Outer Rim. During the 3-day journey, Lyra insisted on cleaning the ship and preparing Jake's meals. She couldn't shake the feeling that she owed him everything and needed to prove her worth. Jake watched her work with growing frustration. Lyra, you don't have to do this. I hired you for your brain, not to be my maid. But I must earn my place, she replied, scrubbing the floor panels. You saved me from slavery. The least I can do is take care of your needs. You're earning your place by being here, Jake said. Tomorrow we'll reach the research station, and I'll need you to help me negotiate with the station commander. He's a Vraxian, and I don't know much about their culture. Lyra paused in her cleaning. Commander Thex is known for being very formal and traditional. You must show respect for his rank and never interrupt him when he speaks. Vraxians also consider it rude to make direct eye contact for more than a few seconds. Jake smiled. See, that's exactly the kind of help I need. I would have probably offended him without meaning to. The next day, they docked at Research Station Alpha 7. Commander Thex was a large alien with gray skin and multiple eyes arranged around his head. Jake followed Lyra's advice, bowing slightly and keeping his gaze respectful. Commander Thex, I'm honored to deliver these medical supplies to your station, Jake said formally. The Vraxian commander looked surprised by Jake's politeness. Most humans he had met were loud and rude. Your delivery is on time and complete, Thex said after inspecting the cargo. This is unexpected efficiency from a human operation. Lyra stepped forward. Commander, my partner Jake Martinez takes some pride in reliable service. Perhaps you have other supply needs we could fulfill. Thex's multiple eyes focused on Lyra with interest. A Zephyrian working with a human? This is most unusual. I was told your species considered humans to be barbarians. I have learned that many things we are told about other species are not true, Lyra replied carefully. The commander ended up giving them a contract for regular supply runs to 3 other research stations. It was more work than Jake had ever gotten from a single client. As they left the station, Jake was amazed by how smoothly the negotiation had gone. I never would have gotten that contract without your help, he told Lyra. You showed respect for his culture, Lyra said. Most humans would have demanded immediate payment and complained about his slow decision-making. Most humans haven't. Had a good teacher, Jake replied. Over the following weeks, they developed a good working relationship. Lyra slowly began to see that Jake's kindness wasn't an act or a way to manipulate her. He really did believe in treating people fairly, regardless of their species. But her biggest shock came when pirates attacked them near the Tau Ceti system. 3 small fighter ships surrounded the Star Runner, demanding they surrender their cargo. Jake's face went calm and focused in a way Lyra had never seen before. Lyra, get to the emergency controls, he said quietly. When I tell you, cut power to everything except life support. But Jake, they have weapons. We should just give them what they want. Not happening, Jake said grimly. He started flipping switches on the pilot's console. These pirates prey on cargo haulers because they think we're easy targets. It's time to show them they're wrong. Jake waited until the pirates moved closer, then suddenly spun the ship around and fired the Star Runner's single plasma cannon. The shot disabled one of the pirate ships. Before the others could react, he cut the engines and let the ship drift like it was damaged. Now, Lyra, he shouted. She cut the power, and the ship went dark. The pirates thought they had destroyed the Star Runner systems and moved in to board. But Jake had prepared for this. He had weapons hidden throughout the ship and knew every corridor and hiding spot. When the pirates came aboard, Jake picked them off one by one using the ship's layout to his advantage. He moved through the darkened corridors like a ghost, using tactics that seemed impossible to the pirates who were used to easy victories. Within an hour, all the pirates were either unconscious or had fled in their remaining ships. Jake restored power and checked on Lyra, who was staring at him in amazement. How did you do that? She asked. You defeated 6 trained pirates by yourself. Jake shrugged. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. You learn a few things. Lyra realized that everything she had thought about humans being primitive was wrong. Jake's tactics had been brilliant, using the enemy's expectations against them. No wonder the galaxy's military forces were starting to take notice of human combat abilities. Your people are not barbarians, she said quietly. You're warriors. Sometimes, Jake said. But only when we have to be. I'd rather solve problems with words than weapons. As they continued their journey, Lyra began sharing stories about her own people. The Zephyrians had once been a proud civilization. But centuries of being conquered and enslaved by stronger species had broken their spirit. They had learned to survive by being useful to their oppressors. We were taught that resistance was futile, she explained, that the strong would always rule the weak, and our only hope was to serve them well enough to avoid punishment. Jake listened with growing anger. Not at Lyra, but at the system that had taught an entire species to give up hope. That's not true, he said firmly. The strong don't have the right to rule anyone. Every being has the right to freedom and dignity. Lyra wanted to believe him, but thousands of years of oppression were hard to overcome. Still, watching Jake's courage and determination was slowly changing something inside her. For the first time in her life, she began to think that maybe fighting back was possible. "Jake," she said one evening as they shared dinner in the galley, "thank you for showing me that there's another way to live." Jake smiled. "Thank you for teaching me about the galaxy beyond Earth. We make a good team." Lyra felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. Maybe with Jake's help she could find the courage to be more than just a survivor. Maybe she could learn to fight for what was right. The Star Runner continued its journey through space, carrying two beings who were both learning that everything they had been taught about each other was wrong. 3 weeks after the pirate attack, Jake and Lyra were making good progress on their supply runs. They had built a reputation for reliable service, and word was spreading that the human cargo hauler treated his alien crew with respect. More, clients were starting to trust them with important deliveries. Everything changed when they received a distress call from the planet Kepler 9. Jake was reviewing their next delivery schedule when the emergency beacon came through their ship's communication system. The message was broken and full of static, but Lyra's face went pale when she heard it. "That's Zephyrian," she said, her voice shaking. "They're calling for help." Jake played the message again, cleaning up the audio as much as possible. Through the interference, they could make out desperate voices pleading for rescue. "Colony under attack," the message said. "Corvan slavers have surrounded our settlement. Galactic Authority refuses to help. Please, anyone who can hear this, we have children here. They're taking our people." Lyra grabbed Jake's arm. "We have to help them. Kepler 9 has a small Zephyrian farming colony. They're peaceful people who just want to live in peace." Jake checked their navigation charts. Kepler 9 was 3 days away at maximum speed. It would mean abandoning their current contracts and possibly getting into serious legal trouble. "The Galactic Authority isn't helping?" he asked. Lyra shook her head bitterly. "They never help Zephyrians. They call it an internal matter when someone attacks us. But if we fight back, suddenly it becomes a crime against galactic peace." Jake looked at the pain in Lyra's eyes and made his decision. "Set course for Kepler 9, maximum speed." "Jake, you could lose your trading license for this. The Galactic Authority doesn't like independent operators getting involved in planetary conflicts." "Then we better make sure we don't get caught," Jake said grimly. The journey to Kepler 9 took 2.5 days of hard flying. When they arrived, they found the planet's small spaceport controlled by Corvan warships. The Corvans were a brutal species that made money by capturing and selling slaves to mining companies and labor camps. Jake landed the Star Runner in a forest clearing 20 miles from the main settlement. He and Lyra hiked through the woods to get a better look at the situation. What they found made Lyra sick with horror. The Corvan slavers had rounded up most of the colony's population and locked them in metal cages. Families were separated, with children crying for their parents. The slavers were sorting people by age and health, deciding who would bring the best prices. "There are at least 50 Corvans," Jake whispered as they watched from the tree line. "They have heavy weapons and armored vehicles." "It's hopeless," Lyra said, tears in her eyes. "We can't fight that many soldiers." Jake studied the slaver camp for a long time. The Corvans were confident and careless. They had never faced serious resistance from Zephyrians before. "Maybe we can't fight them directly," he said slowly. "But there are other ways to win a war." Over the next day, Jake put together a plan that seemed impossible. He snuck into the colonial settlement at night and found the few Zephyrians who had managed to hide from the slavers. Most were terrified and wanted to surrender rather than risk making things worse. "You don't understand," said an elderly Zephyrian named Kalos. We are not warriors. We have never fought anyone. If we resist, they will kill us all. If you don't resist, they'll sell you all anyway, Jake replied. At least fighting gives you a chance. Lyra supported Jake, though she was scared too. He's right, Elder Kelos. I've seen what happens to our people in the mining camps. Death would be more merciful. Jake spent hours teaching the colonists basics, guerrilla warfare tactics. He showed them how to use their knowledge of the local terrain to their advantage. He taught them to strike fast and disappear, to disrupt the enemy's supply lines and communications. Humans have a saying, he told them. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. The Corvins think they're invincible because they have better weapons, but weapons don't make you smart. The first attack came at dawn. Jake led a small group of colonists in a raid on the slavers' supply depot. They used homemade explosives to destroy food and ammunition, then vanished into the forest before the Corvins could respond. The slavers were angry, but not worried. They sent patrols into the woods to hunt down the resistance fighters. Jake had prepared for this too. He taught the Zephyrians how to set traps and ambushes, using the dense forest to separate and confuse the enemy. Lyra surprised herself by how quickly she adapted to the fighting. Her scientific knowledge helped her create better explosives and communication devices. Her empathic abilities let her coordinate with other Zephyrians without speaking, making their attacks perfectly timed. Word of the resistance spread to other oppressed species on nearby planets. A group of escaped slaves arrived to help, followed by refugees from other Corvin attacks. What had started as a desperate rescue mission was becoming something bigger. The Corvin commander, a scarred brute named Vex, grew increasingly frustrated as his forces were picked apart by invisible enemies. He had never encountered this kind of organized resistance from species he considered weak and cowardly. How are these animals defeating trained soldiers? He roared at his officers. They should be begging for mercy, not fighting like demons. The turning point came when Jake realized the Corvins were getting reinforcements from their main base. Instead of being discouraged, he saw an opportunity. More enemies means a bigger victory, he told Lyra as they planned their final attack, and it means more people will hear about what happened here. The last battle took place at the slaver camp itself. Jake coordinated attacks from multiple directions, using everything he had taught the colonists about misdirection and psychological warfare. The Zephyrians fought with courage they didn't know they possessed, inspired by Jake's belief in them. Lyra led a team that freed the prisoners while Jake's forces kept the guards busy. She moved through the camp like a ghost, using her empathic abilities to communicate silently with the captives and coordinate their escape. When the smoke cleared, the Corvin slavers were in full retreat. Their camp was destroyed, their prisoners freed, and their reputation as invincible predators was shattered. Elder Kelos approached Jake with tears in his eyes. You have given us something we thought was lost forever, he said. You have given us back our courage. Jake looked around at the celebrating colonists. Many were injured, and they had lost some good people in the fighting. But they were free, and more importantly, they had learned they could fight for their freedom. I didn't give you anything, Jake told Kelos. The courage was always there, you just needed to remember how to use it. Lyra stood beside Jake, amazed at what they had accomplished. A few months ago, she had been ready to sell herself into slavery just to survive. Now she had helped lead a successful rebellion against one of the galaxy's most feared slaver organizations. What happens now? She asked. Jake smiled grimly. Now the word spreads. Every oppressed species in the galaxy is going to hear that the Corvins can be beaten. And the Galactic Authority is going to learn that humans don't ignore cries for help. As they prepared to leave Kepler-9, Jake knew their lives had changed forever. They were no longer just cargo haulers trying to make a living. They had become symbols of resistance against the galaxy's systems of oppression. The Star Runner lifted off from Kepler-9 carrying more than just Jake and Lyra. It carried the hope that things could change, that the strong didn't always have, to rule the weak. But Jake also knew that powerful enemies would be coming for them soon. The Galactic Authority couldn't allow the idea of successful resistance to spread. The real war was just beginning. News of the victory at Kepler-9 spread across the galaxy faster than Jake and Lyra had expected. Within 2 weeks, they started hearing reports of other colonies fighting back against their oppressors. A mining world had driven off hegemony tax collectors. A farming planet had refused to hand over their harvest to corporate raiders. Jake was checking the news feeds in the Star Runners communication center when Lyra came running from her lab with a worried expression. "Jake, we have a problem," she said, holding up a data pad. "The Galactic Authority has issued a warrant for your arrest. They're calling you a terrorist and a threat to galactic peace." Jake read the warrant with growing anger. According to the document, he had illegally interfered in a legitimate business operation and was responsible for the deaths of Corvan citizens. There was no mention of the slavery or the attack on innocent colonists. They're also offering a reward for any human who helps other species resist authority, Lyra continued. 10,000 credits for information leading to arrest. "They're trying to scare other humans into staying quiet," Jake said. "But it won't work. I've been getting messages from human traders all over the galaxy. They're tired of being treated like garbage by the other species." Over the next few days, Jake's communication system was flooded with messages. Some were from humans offering to help. Others were from alien species asking for assistance with their own problems. A few were death threats from hegemony supporters. The most important message came from Captain Steve Rodriguez, a human freighter pilot operating near the core worlds. His message was brief but urgent. "Jake, they've arrested 5 human traders near Centauri Station. The charges are fake, but the hegemony is planning to execute them as an example. They want to show the galaxy what happens to humans who cause trouble. We need to do something fast." Lyra saw Jake's face turn hard with determination. She had learned to recognize that expression. It meant he was planning something dangerous. "We can't take on the hegemony military," she said carefully. "They have hundreds of warships and thousands of soldiers. We don't need to fight their whole military," Jake replied. "We just need to rescue those prisoners and show the galaxy that humans won't be intimidated." Jake started sending encrypted messages to every human ship captain he knew. Within hours, he had responses from dozens of traders, miners, and independent haulers. They were angry about the arrests and ready to fight back. But Jake also reached out to the alien contacts he and Lyra had made during their travels. Many species that had been oppressed by the hegemony were willing to help, especially after hearing about the victory at Kepler-9. Elder Kilo sent a message from the Zephyrian colony. "Our people remember what you did for us. We have ships and pilots ready to assist you." A group of escaped Corvan slaves offered their knowledge of hegemony security systems. Refugees from a dozen different species volunteered to join the rescue mission. Lyra worked day and night in her lab, combining human engineering ideas with alien technology. She developed new shield generators that could protect ships from hegemony. Weapons. She created communication devices that couldn't be detected or blocked by enemy sensors. "Your human approach to problem solving is remarkable," she told Jake as she showed him her latest invention. "You see solutions that would never occur to other species." "It's because we're used to being the underdogs," Jake replied. "When you're outgunned and outnumbered, you learn to be creative." The rescue fleet assembled at an abandoned mining station in neutral space. Jake was amazed by what he saw. 37 ships from 15 different species, all working together toward a common goal. Humans flew alongside Zephyrians. Escaped slaves worked with free traders, and former enemies shared resources and information. Captain Rodriguez arrived with detailed intelligence about where the human prisoners were being held. The hegemony had put them in a maximum security facility on Sigma Base, one of their most heavily defended installations. "It's impossible," said Commander Tall, a military officer from a species that had recently joined the resistance. "Sigma Base has defensive shields that can stop a fleet. The prison is surrounded by automated weapon systems." Jake studied the base's layout for hours looking for weaknesses. Finally, he found what he was looking for. "They're expecting a direct attack," he said, "so we won't give them one. We'll go in quiet and make them think they're under attack from the inside." The plan was complex and dangerous. Small teams would infiltrate the base using maintenance tunnels and service corridors. They would disable the prison security systems and extract the prisoners while the main fleet created a distraction outside. Lyra insisted on joining the infiltration team despite Jake's objections. "I know hegemony computer systems," she said. "You'll need me to hack their databases and disable their alarms." The mission began at midnight station time. Jake led a team of 12 volunteers through the asteroid field surrounding Sigma Base. They used Lyra's new stealth technology to avoid detection by the base's sensors. Getting inside was easier than expected. The hegemony's arrogance worked against them. They never imagined that primitive species could penetrate their advanced security. Jake's team moved through the base like shadows, avoiding patrols and security cameras. Lyra's hacking skills got them through locked doors and disabled alarm systems. Her empathic abilities helped her sense when guards were approaching. They found the human prisoners in a high-security cell block. All 5 were alive, but had been beaten and tortured. Captain Martinez, the senior prisoner, could barely stand. "Jake Martinez," he whispered when he saw his rescuer. "We heard about what you did at Kepler 9. Never thought we'd see a friendly face again." "Save the thanks for later," Jake said as Lyra worked to open the cell locks. "We need to get out of here fast." The escape went smoothly until they reached the outer corridors. A hegemony patrol spotted them and raised the alarm. Suddenly, the base was flooded with emergency lights and the sound of running soldiers. "This way," Jake shouted, leading the group toward their planned extraction point. But hegemony forces were converging on their location from all directions. That's when the main fleet struck. Captain Rodriguez led the attack on the base's outer defenses, drawing most of the defenders away from the prison. The rescued prisoners and their rescuers fought their way to the extraction point, while explosions shook the station. As they reached their escape ship, Jake realized this mission had changed everything. The rescue had succeeded, but more importantly, it had shown the galaxy that humans and their allies could strike at the heart of hegemony power. "They'll come after us with everything they have now," Lyra said as their ship escaped from Sigma Base. "Good," Jake replied grimly. "It's time the galaxy saw what happens when free people fight together." The rescue fleet scattered to different hiding places, but Jake knew they would regroup soon. The war between the hegemony and the resistance had officially begun, and there would be no going back. As the Star Runner jumped to hyperspace, Jake looked at Lyra with pride. The frightened refugee he had met on Nexus Station was gone. In her place was a confident leader who had helped change the galaxy. "Ready for what comes next?" he asked. Lyra smiled, her bioluminescent hair patterns glowing brighter than he had ever seen them. Ready to fight for freedom. 6 months after the rescue at Sigma Base, the resistance had grown beyond anything Jake had imagined. What started as a small group of rebels had become a fleet of over 300 ships from dozens of different species. They called themselves the Free Alliance, and their symbol was painted on ships across the galaxy. Jake stood on the bridge of the Liberty, a captured hegemony cruiser that had become the flagship of the resistance fleet. Lyra worked beside him as the fleet's chief science officer, coordinating the complex mix of technologies that kept their ships running. The final battle was about to begin. Intelligence reports showed that the Hegemony Council had assembled the largest military force in galactic history. Over 1,000 warships surrounded their capital world of Dominion Prime, waiting to crush the rebellion once and for all. "Are you sure about this plan?" asked Captain Rodriguez, who now commanded a squadron of human fighters. "We're outnumbered 3-1. Jake looked out at the assembled fleet. Humans flew alongside Zephyrians. Former slaves fought next to free traders, and species that had been enemies for centuries worked together against their common oppressor. "Numbers don't always win wars," he said. "The hegemony expects us to fight like they do, with big ships and overwhelming force. But that's not how humans fight." Lyra activated the communication system, sending Jake's voice to every ship in the fleet. "All ships, this is Admiral Martinez. Today we fight not just for ourselves, but for every being in the galaxy who dreams of freedom. The hegemony thinks they can crush us with superior numbers, but they're wrong. They don't understand what we're really fighting for." The battle began when the Free Alliance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Dominion system. The hegemony forces immediately moved to surround them, confident that their superior firepower would end the rebellion quickly. But Jake had learned from every battle he had fought. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, he divided his fleet into small, fast-moving groups that struck at different targets simultaneously. Lyra's technological innovations gave the Alliance ships crucial advantages. Her new shield systems could absorb hegemony weapons fire and redirect the energy to their own guns. Her communication networks allowed perfect coordination between ships that had never worked together before. The battle raged across the entire solar system. Human fighters used their superior maneuverability to outflank massive hegemony battleships. Zephyrian crews used their empathic abilities to predict enemy movements and coordinate perfect ambushes. On the surface of Dominion Prime, the Hegemony Council watched their forces being systematically defeated by opponents they had dismissed as inferior. Council leader Vorth, a massive alien with multiple arms and cold black eyes, couldn't understand what was happening. "How are they winning?" he demanded of his military advisors. "Their ships are smaller, their weapons are older, and their crews are made up of refugees and criminals. They fight differently than we expected," Admiral Kex replied nervously. "They use tactics we've never seen before. Their human leader seems to anticipate our every move." "Then kill the human," Vorth snarled. "Cut off the head and the body will die." But Jake had anticipated this too. Instead of commanding from a safe distance, he led from the front, making himself a target while ensuring that the fleet could function without him if necessary. Every ship captain knew the battle plan and could adapt to changing circumstances. Turning point came when Lyra led a strike team to capture the Hegemony's primary communication hub. Using her scientific knowledge and the diverse skills of her mixed species team, she managed to take control of the enemy's entire communication network. Suddenly, the Hegemony fleet found itself fighting blind and deaf. Their ships couldn't coordinate attacks or call for reinforcements. Meanwhile, the Free Alliance used the captured network to coordinate their own forces perfectly. One by one, Hegemony ships began to surrender. Their crews had been told they were fighting savage primitives, but they found themselves outmatched by opponents who fought with intelligence, courage, and perfect teamwork. The final surrender came when Jake's personal fighter, escorted by a squadron of Alliance ships, landed in the courtyard of the Hegemony Council building. The symbolism was clear to everyone watching across the galaxy. The mighty Hegemony had been defeated by the species they had oppressed. Council leader Vorth was waiting in the council chamber, his multiple arms shaking with rage and fear. "You think you've won, human? Destroy us and 10 more empires will rise to take our place." Jake removed his helmet and looked Vorth in the eyes. "We're not here to destroy you. We're here to offer you a choice. Join the new galactic government based on equality and mutual respect, or face trial for your crimes against sentient beings." The establishment of the new Galactic Federation took months of careful negotiation. Representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to write new laws based on principles Jake and Lyra had learned during their journey together. Every being had the right to freedom, dignity, and self-determination. Jake was offered the position of Federation President, but he turned it down. "I'm a cargo hauler, not a politician," he said with a smile. "Besides, the galaxy needs leaders from many species, not just humans." Instead, the Federation was governed by a council with representatives from every member species. Decisions were made by consensus rather than force, and conflicts were resolved through negotiation rather than war. Lyra became the Federation's first director of scientific cooperation, overseeing research projects that combined the knowledge of dozens of different species. The technological advances that resulted were beyond anything any single species could have achieved alone. A year after the Battle of Dominion Prime, Jake and Lyra were back aboard the Star Runner, now officially registered as a Federation diplomatic vessel. They traveled from world to world, helping new species join the Federation and mediating disputes between old enemies. "Do you ever miss the simple days when we were just hauling cargo?" Lyra asked as they watched a group of former slaves learning to read in the ship's converted classroom. Jake smiled as he watched a young Zephyrian child playing with a human toddler, both of them giggling as they shared toys. "Sometimes, but look at what we've accomplished. A year ago, that kid would have been sold to slavers. Now she's learning to read and dream about her future. Lyra touched the communication panel, sending a message to the dozens of mixed-species crews they had trained over the past year. Each ship carried the same message of hope and cooperation that had started with one human's decision to help a desperate alien. "The galaxy is a different place now," she said softly. "Species that were enemies for centuries are working together. Children who would have been slaves are going to school. People who never dared to dream of freedom are building new lives." Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about all the worlds where beings were now free to pursue their own destinies. It's not perfect yet. There are still problems to solve and wrongs to make right. But it's a start. The Star Runner continued its journey through space, carrying two friends who had learned that the greatest strength came not from dominating others, but from helping them discover their own potential. In the end, the poor, hopeless, alien beauty who had once begged to become a servant had instead become a leader who helped transform the galaxy. And the human who had shown her kindness had learned that true victory meant lifting others up rather than tearing them down. Their story became legend throughout the galaxy, proving that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to treat others with dignity and respect.